day, everyone, and welcome back to Mr. Daily Speak English. We're very happy to have you here with us today. I'm David.
And I'm Emily. If this is your first time listening, we'd like to give you a big, warm welcome. And if you've listened to our podcast before, we're really glad that you decided to come back.
This podcast is created for people who are learning English, especially those at a beginner level.
We always speak slowly and clearly, and we use easy, simple words so you can understand better and enjoy the learning process.
Exactly.
In every episode, our goal is to help you learn how to talk about real-life topics.
Things people actually talk about in daily life, such as family, everyday routines, and situations you experience regularly.
And today's topic is all about work and jobs, which is something many people talk about when they meet someone new.
So let us explain what we're going to do today.
First, you're going to listen to a short and easy conversation between two friends.
It's a simple dialogue that uses real English, the kind of English people use in everyday situations.
After that, we'll go through the conversation together, step by step.
We'll explain the useful words and phrases that are used in the dialogue.
That means we'll tell you what those words mean and show you how you can use them in your own English.
Yes.
We'll also share some examples from our own lives, and we'll give you time to repeat the phrases and practice speaking.
So don't worry.
You're going to learn a lot today, but we'll keep everything fun, relaxed, and simple.
All right then.
Are you ready to begin?
Let's start by listening to the dialogue. Hey, Julia. It's really great to see you again. Wow, it feels like such a long time has passed since we last met.
Hey, Alex. Yeah, I know. It really has been a while. It's nice to see you again, too.
So tell me, what are you doing these days? What kind of work are you into now?
Well, at the moment, I'm working as a business consultant.
Oh, nice. That actually sounds very interesting. So what do you do for a living? I mean, what does a consultant actually do?
Well, I mostly help people who want to start a new business, especially in the health and fitness field. I give them advice on how to begin, what steps they should take first, and how they can grow their business over time.
That's really interesting. Do you work by yourself or do you work for a company?
I work for a company called Active Business Solutions. I've been working with them for almost 2 years now.
Oh, I see. So what is your job like on a daily basis?
My job includes many different things. I deal with marketing, and I'm also responsible for helping clients choose the right tools for their business. Sometimes I'm also in charge of finding new products like gym equipment and other wellness tools.
It sounds like you have a lot of work to handle.
Yes, it definitely keeps me busy. I also give business owners advice not only about products, but also about managing money and staff.
Wow, that really is a lot. My job is a bit simpler compared to yours.
What do you do?
I work in sales at a technology company. Most of my time is spent making calls and writing reports.
That's still good. Do you like the working conditions there?
They're okay. I have fixed working hours from 9 to 5, but sometimes I have to work overtime, especially at the end of the month.
Do they pay you extra for the overtime?
Not always, but they usually give us extra time off later, which is nice. And honestly, I'm just glad that I get paid regularly.
I understand that. I know some people who work minimum wage jobs, and even though they work very hard, they still earn very little.
That's true. I feel quite lucky. My salary isn't bad, and I also earn some commission, so my total income is around $25,000 a year.
Oh, same here. I usually say I earn about $25,000 a year, but of course I don't keep all of it. A big part goes to income tax.
Tell me about it. I lose about 20% of my income to taxes.
So what is your role like in the office?
Well, I'm not a manager, but I help the manager by preparing reports. She runs the team and takes care of all the daily tasks, like talking to clients and planning meetings. She's also in charge of the junior staff.
That's quite similar to what I used to do. I worked in a medical office before, and I did a lot of administrative work there.
Like what kind of tasks?
I ordered supplies, answered phone calls, and dealt with complaints from patients.
Oh, I see. Why did you leave that job?
I wanted to try something new, so I quit my job and started applying for new positions.
I remember that. Weren't you unemployed for a few months?
Yes, I was. I did a few part-time jobs here and there, but what I really wanted was a full-time job with good hours and better pay.
And now you finally have that.
Yes, I do. I'm happy now. Even though the job is busy, I really enjoy what I do.
It sounds like you made the right decision. All right, now let's begin with 3 very common questions that people usually ask when they meet someone for the first time.
All of these questions are related to work, and they are very useful in everyday conversations.
The questions are, what do you do? What do you do for a living? And what's your job?
All 3 questions have the same meaning.
When you ask them, you're asking someone what kind of work they do or how they make money.
Yes, these questions are extremely common in English.
If you meet someone new, maybe at a cafe, at school, or even at a friend's party, this is often one of the first questions people ask.
And they are polite questions as well.
In English, asking someone about their job is a normal part of small talk.
It helps people start a conversation and get to know each other better.
Now, let's look at a quick example.
Imagine I meet Emily at a cafe, and I say, "Hi, I'm David. Nice to meet you. So, what do you do?"
And she answers, I'm a teacher. I teach English at a language school.
Simple, right?
Very simple and very natural.
I could also ask, "What do you do for a living?"
This question sounds a little more formal, but it's still very common.
You might hear it at events or at networking meetings.
It has the same meaning. You're asking what someone does to earn money.
For example, someone might say, "I work in a hospital. I'm a nurse."
Or, I'm a mechanic, I fix cars.
Or, "I work for a software company."
I remember once I was at a wedding and I sat next to a man I didn't know.
I smiled and said, "Hi, I'm David. What do you do for a living?"
And we ended up talking about his job for about 30 minutes.
I had a similar experience once.
I asked someone the same question on a train just to be friendly.
And it turned out that we had very similar jobs. Later on, we actually became friends.
Now, the third question is, what's your job?
This one is very direct and very simple.
However, there is a small note to remember.
We usually use this question when we already know someone a little bit.
For example, if someone says, I'm always so busy.
You might reply by asking, "What's your job?"
So let's quickly review.
What do you do? This one is friendly and very common.
What do you do for a living? This one's a bit more formal, but still normal.
And what's your job? This one is short, clear, and direct.
Okay, now let's practice together.
Hi, what do you do?
I work in customer service.
Oh, cool. What kind of company?
I work for an airline.
And here's a helpful tip.
When someone asks you this question, just think about where you work and what you usually do most days.
Yes, even if you're a student or a stay-at-home parent, you can still answer easily.
You can say, I'm a student.
Or, "I stay at home and take care of my kids."
Or, I work part-time at a cafe. All right, so now you know how to ask someone about their job, such as asking, what do you do? Or, what's your job?
But the next important question is, how do you answer when someone asks you that?
One of the easiest and best ways to answer is to say, I work in, and then add the place or the type of work you do.
For example, you can say, I work in sales.
This means that your job is related to selling things. It could involve talking to customers, making deals, or helping people choose the right product.
You don't always need to say your exact job title.
You can simply say the area or field you work in.
This makes your answer clear and easy to understand.
For example, you might say, I work in education.
That means you are a teacher, or you work in a school, or you do something related to students and learning.
Yes, I have a friend who often says, I work in healthcare.
She isn't a doctor, but she works in a hospital.
She helps patients fill out forms and book appointments.
That's a great example.
Let's give a few more examples for practice.
I work in a supermarket.
I work in IT, which means computers and technology.
I work in customer service.
Now, here is another very useful structure.
You can say, I work for someone or somewhere.
We usually use I work for when we want to say the name of the company or describe the organization we work for.
For example, you might say, I work for a language school in my city.
Or, I work for a private school.
I used to say, I worked for Union Bank.
That was many years ago.
I worked in the finance department.
I didn't really love that job, but I learned a lot from it.
That's an important point to remember. You can use I work for when you want to talk about the company.
And I work in when you want to talk about the type of work you do.
Now let's imagine a short conversation.
I will ask first, so what do you do?
I work in education.
I work for a private school in London.
Now you try.
I work in technology.
I work for a small app company.
Easy, right?
Yes, very easy.
And you don't need to say too much.
Just 2 short sentences are enough.
And if you're not working right now, that's completely okay too.
You can say, I'm looking for work.
Or, I don't have a job right now.
Or simply, I'm a student.
Or, I'm taking care of my family at home.
Now let's help our listeners practice together.
Repeat after us. I work in marketing.
I work for a travel agency.
Great.
Now try these.
I work in a restaurant.
I work for a travel agency.
Great job.
You're learning very useful ways to talk about your job in real conversations.
All right. Now that we know how to say where we work, like saying I work in a hospital or I work for a bank, let's move to the next step.
What do you actually do in your job?
Yes, when someone asks you what you do at work, you can talk about your tasks.
These are the things you do every day as part of your job.
Let's begin with a very useful phrase. I deal with something.
Yes, the phrase I deal with is a great way to explain what your job is about.
It tells people what you work with or who you help at work.
For example, I can say, I deal with students.
That means I help students with their lessons, answer their questions, and sometimes help them with their problems.
And when I worked at a bank, I used to say, I deal with customers.
That means I talked to people, helped them open accounts, answered phone calls, and did similar tasks.
So it's very simple.
If you work in a shop, you might say, I deal with clothes, or I deal with money.
If you work in a kitchen, you can say, I deal with food.
Great.
Now let's move on to another useful phrase.
I'm responsible for something.
This phrase means this is your job.
It is something you must do.
It is your duty at work.
For example, I might say, I'm responsible for making lesson plans.
That means I write the plans for my students every week.
I also used to say, I'm responsible for writing reports.
That was part of my job.
I had to do it regularly.
Now let's give a few more examples.
I'm responsible for keeping the kitchen clean.
Can you give another example?
Sure. I'm responsible for booking meetings.
Simple, right?
Yes, very simple.
Now let's look at a phrase that sounds a bit more formal.
I'm in charge of something.
Yes,
In charge of is similar to responsible for.
but it often means you are the leader or the person with control over something.
For example, when I worked at the bank, I was in charge of the new staff.
I helped train them and they came to me when they had questions.
I can also say, I'm in charge of the speaking lessons at my school.
That means I plan them and help other teachers use them as well.
If you work in a restaurant, you might be in charge of the drinks.
If you work in a shop, you might be in charge of the cash register.
And don't worry, you don't have to be a big manager to use this phrase.
You can also be in charge of small things.
Even at home, you might say, I'm in charge of cooking dinner.
Why not? Okay, now let's look at one last very useful phrase.
My job involves something.
This phrase is an easy way to explain what your job includes.
It talks about the activities, the work, and the tasks you do.
For example, I often say, my job involves teaching grammar, helping students speak English, and checking homework.
And I used to say, my job involves talking to clients and sending emails.
That was true.
I spent most of my working day doing those things.
This phrase is very helpful because you can list more than one activity.
For example, you can say, my job involves cleaning, cooking, and answering the phone. Okay, friends, now let's talk about something that is important for all of us: money.
We all work in order to make money, right?
So today, we're going to learn some very useful English words connected to money and work.
Yes, and don't worry, we'll keep everything simple and enjoyable.
You will hear these words very often in real life.
You might hear them at work, during job interviews, or when you're talking to a friend about your job.
Let's begin with the first expression: to be paid or to get paid.
To be paid means that you receive money for doing your job.
That's the basic idea. You work and someone gives you money.
That means you are paid.
For example, you can say, I get paid every Friday.
Or you might say, we get paid once a month.
These are simple sentences, but they are very important.
Yes, I still remember my first job.
I worked at a small coffee shop near my school.
I made cappuccinos and cleaned tables.
I got paid in cash every Saturday.
It wasn't a lot of money, but I felt very happy.
I was 17 years old, and it was the first time I earned my own money.
I really loved that feeling.
My first job was in a supermarket.
I worked part-time, and I got paid every 2 weeks.
I used that money to buy my first guitar.
I still have that guitar today. All right, now let's move on to the next word, salary.
A salary is the amount of money you receive regularly, usually every month, if you have a full-time job.
This is the money that your boss or company pays you.
It usually stays the same every month.
For example, you can say, my salary is $2,000 a month.
Or you might say, I have a good salary.
That means your regular pay is okay or even very good.
When I worked full-time at a bank, I had a salary.
Every month, I received the same amount, no matter how busy or quiet the month was.
That made planning much easier. I always knew how much money was coming in.
Yes, that's one nice thing about having a salary. It is regular and steady.
When I first started teaching full-time, I remember getting my first salary and thinking, wow, this feels very adult.
Now, let's talk about another important word, income.
Income means all the money you receive.
So your salary is part of your income.
But income can also include money from other jobs, side work, or anything else.
For example, you might say, my income is about $25,000 a year.
That means that in 1 year, you earn $25,000 from all your work.
Now, sometimes, instead of using the word income, we often use two other very common verbs.
These verbs are earn and make.
Yes, both of these words mean to get money from your work.
For example, you can say, I earn $2,000 a month.
Or you can say, I make $15 an hour.
You might also hear sentences like, she earns a good salary.
These are all very natural and common ways to talk about money in English.
Now, let's give another example.
Sure, he doesn't make much money, but he really loves his job.
When I had a part-time job, I made about $300 a month.
Later on, when I started working full-time, I earned much more money.
However, I also had more working hours and more stress.
All right.
So now we've talked about your job, your working hours, and how much money you earn.
But sometimes things change.
Life doesn't always stay the same.
You might decide to leave your job.
Or in some cases, you might even lose your job.
This is normal, and it happens to many people.
Yes.
And in English, there are a few simple words and phrases to help you talk about these situations.
Let's start with a phrase we hear very often.
I quit my job.
If you quit your job, it means that you choose to leave.
No one tells you to go.
You make the decision yourself.
Maybe the job is too stressful.
Maybe you want to study.
Or maybe you want to try something new.
Exactly.
Here are two simple examples.
I quit my job because I wanted to travel.
She quit her job and started her own business.
I remember the first job I ever quit. It was in a small clothing shop.
I liked the people and they liked helping customers, but the working hours were long.
I was tired all the time. One day I thought to myself, I want to be a teacher.
So I quit that job and signed up for a course.
I did something very similar.
I was working at a bank.
The pay was good and the job felt safe, but I wasn't happy.
I wanted to do something more creative.
So I quit my job and started teaching English part-time.
It was a scary decision at first.
But when I look back now, I know it was the right choice.
So remember, when you say, I quit my job, it means you chose to leave.
It often means you are starting something new.
All right. And that brings us to the end of today's episode.
Thank you so much for learning with us today.
You're doing better than you think.
And we're really proud of you.
We'll see you next time on Mr. Daily Speak English.
Take care and bye for now.